Hello there and welcome to the Stargazers Podcast. My name is Lara and today I'm talking with a friend of mine, John Kahler, on the topic of waste management. If you could please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is John Kahler. I am I suppose you would call me an environmentalist, I suppose is what you would say, and just a person trying to reduce their waste in general.
Have you always been conscious about waste?
No, I have not. Like most people, I've been, for the first, 19 years of my life, I was very into consumeristic tendencies, buying a lot, wasting a lot, and just spending most of my time just purchasing and all that. It wasn't until I actually became vegan that I started to focus more on that environmental side of things.
So was the next question was, did anything trigger your desire to improve your waste management? Was that it?
Yeah, well, that was probably it. I initially went vegan for the health. I think a lot of people do tend to do that when it comes to veganism, but once you start to understand the more ethical and environmental side of things, as you become indoctrinated into that side of things, you start to realize about the impact that it actually has. And I think that when you decide to go vegan for environmental reasons, there's sort of like a cognitive dissonance that arises when you're not doing more to actually help the environment and become more sustainable. Because if you do recognize that there are issues with the way we produce our food, then you also have to sort of realize that there is more to be done in other aspects, whether it be through fashion or our just general consumption. And I think that was a big factor for me.
Yeah. Do you have any best tips that you've learned about managing your waste?
When it comes to waste management, I think it's important to do it slowly. So a lot of people look on social media and they see how I suppose perfect people are, and they look and see that everyone's reducing their waste into a jar and they can fit it all in there, and they've got 2 years worth of rubbish in a small mason jar, and they think that's what I have to aim for. But in terms of waste, especially in the society that we live in, I think it's important to make slower steps, because majority of people can't do that, and society as a whole, it would be very hard to reach that standard. So I think in terms of making slow, gradual changes is super important. So for here in Queensland, we've gotten rid of plastic bags. Obviously that's a big step, but when it comes to buying produce and you're putting your carrots or vegetables in a bag, just change to reusable mesh bags instead of the plastic ones that they still provide. Or a keep cup. That's a huge movement that we've seen at the moment. And making those small changes makes it a lot more sustainable for people's lives as well. And I think that's a huge thing to remember, is that you're not only looking at the sustainability of the planet, but also what's sustainable for your lifestyle as a whole. So if you're going out and you're just trying to go all or nothing, it's probably not gonna last as a lifestyle change.
Yeah. Do you have any shops or places that you go to that are your favorite areas for doing all this stuff?
Well, I think one of the huge changes you can make is buying in bulk, buying food in bulk. Not a lot of people realize the packaging that actually exists in supermarkets. Outside of the produce, or even sometimes in the produce sections, everything in a supermarket is covered in plastic. So if you can find a store that sells bulk foods and packageless bulk foods, I'm not talking about Costco or anything like that. I actually went onto my Instagram and asked people if they buy in bulk, and I got all these messages being oh yeah, I love Costco, Costco's the best. I'm well, I meant packageless bulk. But yeah, so that would be one of the best things you can do, and a lot of places in, say, Brisbane, for example, have these bulk food stores. They're not that uncommon. It's just about finding them. So I find that actually they're some of my favorite places to go to and sort of to start that sustainability journey, because there's a mindfulness that also comes with buying in bulk. When you're filling up a bag or a jar with food for your week or however long it is, you have to be mindful about how much you're actually taking and consuming. So, and I think that's a message that sort of is carries out through all of sustainability and sustainable living.
Would you be able to maybe mention some of those places, your top favorites?
Yeah. So there's the Source Bulk Foods, which is a company that I think started in Byron Bay, and has recently gone international to the UK and possibly in New Zealand. But they just, they have bulk foods for everything from teas to grains like rice and oats. But they also have other stuff like chocolate and lollies and nearly anything you can imagine. They have coffee, maple syrup, and all these different things. And so I think that people often don't realize how much they can actually get in bulk.
Yeah. And they're not advertised quite as much.
No, they're not. No, you don't really see them. Because obviously you've got, those monopolies of Woolworths and whatnot.
Yeah.
In places like America where they have like Whole Foods, they do bulk as well. So I think as it becomes more popular in Australia, you'd see Woolworths and Coles and Aldi sort of adopting those sort of bulk foods as well eventually.
Yeah.
Hopefully, ideally.
I've heard some, seen some stories and stuff like that about people finding these amazing food markets and stuff really early in the morning. They're like night markets, and finding like fruit they'd never heard of before, and like foods that were like, what is this? It's so interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's like the other half of it. When in terms of produce, farmers market's like the best bet. So there's a place near my house called the Northern Street Markets, and they're part of like an organic sort of urban farm. And I go down there every Sunday to get the produce that I need. I can't say that I've stumbled across any exotic fruits yet, but it's definitely the best way to get locally grown organic food in that sense. Yeah.
Has anything surprised you whilst looking into how to decrease waste?
Well, in terms of reducing waste as a whole, obviously food is just one aspect of it. So there's everything from the way that you consume in general. You're trying to consume less overall, which is really hard to do in the sort of society that we live in. With the marketing that we have, and
everything's in bulk.
Well, I mean, capitalism as a whole relies on supply and demand and that consumeristic tendencies, which is obviously a huge problem when you're trying to reduce your overall waste. And in that sense, it's surprised me how little you actually need to actually buy through your day-to-day life. There are some things that are unavoidable if you still want to live not as a hermit, pretty much. Obviously fuel and stuff like that. But one of the most surprising things to me was actually fashion, and the fact that the clothes that you wear, if they're made of, say, synthetic fibers, a lot of the waste that comes from that unknowingly from microplastics when you're washing and stuff like that, it actually has a huge impact on the environment. But it doesn't come from fashion alone. It comes from, say, when you buy a plastic water bottle. You get these microplastics, which are basically little chunks of plastic that are like less than 5 millimeters long. So they can be microscopic, but they can also just be small fragments that end up, in our waterways and our oceans, and have actually been found to be coming back into our food.
That's so scary.
So obviously with the food chain, you find like microorganisms eat the microplastics, and then bigger fish eat those ones, and eventually they end up in our salt, in our seafood that we're eating, and even in our water. Because if you have a water bottle that's in a plastic water bottle, that's going to naturally have microplastics from the actual bottle that it's in.
On that topic, what water bottles do you recommend?
Stainless steel, literally just a reusable stainless steel water bottle. It's like you see people with keep cups using those instead, and straws. Except the thing about that is you see people using like a metal straw, because they're like, I hate straws and it's bad for the environment, and they go ahead and put it in a Starbucks cup, that's fully made of plastic, and I don't think they fully understand the meaning behind it. Instead, they're just adopting a trend. So I think it's important that you actually understand the reason behind using a keep cup or a reusable water bottle and stuff.
And I think that a lot of the eco-friendly kind of stuff that's coming through right now, a lot of it has has stuff to do with being aesthetic and stuff like that. Like one of my friends, she's super, like everything is this really pretty thing in her room, like everything. And she's got a metal straw with a little scrubber to clean it, and then like a mason jar-esque thing. And so everything she does is like, she loves all of these like eco stores and stuff like that. And she makes it just look so pretty. I can sort of get the appeal of that, and I do that to a degree as well, but it becomes a problem when you're like, well, I got like a stainless steel water bottle with this print, it looks really lovely, but then our company releases another one, and you're like, but I want that one as well, so I'll just get rid of my last one. It sort of defeats the purpose and it's hard, it really is hard, especially with all the marketing that exists nowadays, and the sort of encouragement to buy more, but it's just reminding yourselves about
what you actually need and what's actually important.
Cool. Well, I've got a few fun facts here, some of which are about how long it takes for things to decompose. So apparently, for paper, it takes about 2.5 months for it to fully decompose. For a milk carton, it takes 5 years. Plastic bag, it takes 10 to 20 years. A tin can, 100 years. Styrofoam will never decompose. An orange peel takes 6 months. A cigarette butt takes 10 to 12 years. A disposable nappy is 75 years. A beer can, 200 to 500 years. And glass bottles and jars will never as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also important to realize that while some things will break down and decompose, not all of them are actually breaking down and are decomposable. They're just simply degradable.
Yeah.
So, and that's a huge issue that you also have with like whitewashing and stuff. So a company may have a product and they say, well, it's compostable, and they simply mean that it can break down into small bits, and that's where you get those microplastics and stuff like that, as opposed to decomposable, where it actually is like wood with food, where it's actually chemically changed into a natural resource.
Yeah. Well, this has been very, very interesting. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. Yeah. I hope listeners not only enjoyed, but perhaps learned a thing or two like I did. And until next time, this is the Stargazers Podcast.
Thank you very much.